Chapter 8. Daisy must have seen Rowdy and me coming up through our fields because she was standing on the porch when we came walking up. With a frown on her face, she peered at us. Letting out a low whistle, she said, "Holy smokes, Jay Barry, what happened to you and Rowdy? Both of you look like you've been run through a briar patch." "Oh, Daisy," I said, "didn't anything happen to us? We just had a little fight with those monkeys and they bit us a few times. That's all." "A few times," Daisy said. "It doesn't look like a few times to me. It looks like those monkeys just about ate you up this time." Before I could say anything else, Daisy turned and hollered through the open door of the house, "Mama, Mama, come and look at Jay Barry and Rowdy. They're all chewed up to pieces, and there's blood all over them." This time, Mama must have been peeling potatoes when she heard Daisy yell because she still had one in her hand when she came flying out the door, scared half to death. "Blood?" Mama said in a quavering voice, looking at Daisy. "Who's bleeding?" "Jay Barry and Rowdy, Mama," Daisy said as she pointed with her hand. "Look at them. They look like they've been run through a briar patch." With more scare in her eyes than I had ever seen before, Mama looked at me and said, "Jay Barry, are you all right?" "Oh, Mama," I said, "you know how Daisy is. She's just trying to make something big out of nothing. I'm all right. I just got bit a few times by those monkeys. That's all." Looking up towards the heavens, Mama closed her eyes and muttered something that no one could have understood. Daisy came over, took hold of my arm, and started looking at my monkey bites. Shaking her head and making a little clicking noise with her tongue, she said, "Jay Barry, I'm scared. I'm scared half to death." "Scared?" I said. "What are you scared of? The monkeys didn't bite you." "I don't care," Daisy said. "I'm scared just the same. We don't know anything about monkeys. For all we know, they may have hydrophobia." I wanted to say something, but I couldn't get my mouth open. My stomach got all knotted up, and I shivered a little, like I was having a cold chill. I looked to Mama for some help. Mama couldn't have helped anyone right then, because she was just as scared as I was. She just stood there, staring at me with her face as white as a hen's egg. Her mouth opened, and I thought she was going to say something, but nothing came out. People in the Cherokee Hills were so scared of hydrophobia, they didn't talk about it in loud voices. They usually spoke about it in whispers. When news spread through the hills that a mad animal was prowling, windows and doors were locked. Everywhere the menfolks went, they carried their shotguns and rifles. Until the mad animal was taken care of, children were kept indoors and all stock was brought into the barn lot. While hanging around my grandpa's store, I had heard some weird tales about animals and people that had gone mad with hydrophobia. How they had frothed at the mouth and their eyes had turned green as cucumbers. In the dark of night, they would prowl through the country howling and moaning and biting everything that got close to them. It was enough to scare a fellow clean out of his britches. Daisy saw that she had me paralyzed with fear, and she started carrying on again. "Mama, there's not but one thing we can do," she said. "We'll just have to chain him and Rowdy to a fence post." This seemed to shake some of the scare out of Mama. "Chain him to a fence post," she said in a loud voice. "Why, Daisy, what on earth are you saying?" "That's all we can do, Mama," Daisy said. "That's all you can do with anything that's going mad. You have to chain them to something and watch them. If their eyes turn green and they start foaming at the mouth and biting things, then you'll know that they're mad. It wouldn't do any good to tie him up with a rope. If he does go mad, he would gnaw right through a rope." Daisy had me so scared by now that I could almost feel myself frothing at the mouth and snapping at everything that got close to me. I think I would have gone mad for sure if Papa hadn't come walking up about that time. Frowning, Papa looked at Mama and said, "What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost." Before Mama could say anything, Daisy popped up and said, "It's Jay Barry again, Papa. He's really got himself into a mess this time. He and Rowdy had a fight with those monkeys and got bitten all over. For all we know, they may have hydrophobia." "Papa," I cried, "they think I'm going mad, and they're talking about chaining me to a fence post." Papa chuckled and said, "Oh, I don't think we'll have to do anything like that. Those monkeys belong to a circus and came in contact with people every day. They've probably been vaccinated for all kinds of diseases. A big circus like that wouldn't have taken a chance on having a bunch of sick monkeys around." Papa didn't know it, but he had practically brought me back from the grave. I began to feel a little better, but not very much. Regardless of what Papa had said, Daisy wasn't convinced that I wasn't going mad. "Just the same," she said, "I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to keep my eye on him, and I'm locking the door to my room every night. If he does go mad, I don't want him sneaking in and biting me." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Mama said. Now that will be enough out of you, young lady. You shouldn't be saying things like that. Papa said, I think the best thing to do right now is to get something on those monkey bites. They could get infected. I think so too, Mama said. Daisy said, Mama, you doctor Jay Berry, and I'll take care of Rowdy. He wouldn't bite me, even if he was going mad. Mama went in the house and came back with some clean rags, a bottle of peroxide, and some iodine. Every time Mama dabbed one of the bites with peroxide, I would have a dancing fit. But when I started putting that iodine on me, I yipped and hopped all over the place. By the time she was through, I felt like I had been boiled in a washpot. All the time Mama was doctoring me, I could hear Daisy cooing and talking to old Rowdy. He was whimpering and whining and licking Daisy's hands and begging her not to put that stinging, burning stuff on him. Daisy was a little more artistic with her doctoring than Mama was. She wrapped Rowdy's monkey bites with all kinds of bright-colored rags and tied them in bow knots. When she was through with him, he looked like a Christmas package. Rowdy took one look at himself and was so disgusted with what he saw, he scooted under the house. I couldn't help laughing a little. The next morning, I was so sore and stiff I couldn't get out of bed and make it to the breakfast table. I was lying there feeling sorry for myself and thinking about all that money down in the bottoms, hoping or hopping around in those sycamore trees when Mama, Papa, and Daisy came into my room. Papa looked at me and asked, How do you feel? I don't feel so good, Papa, I said. I'm as sore and stiff as an old hound dog that's been chasing a fox all night. Daisy giggled and said, Jay Berry, if you think you're in bad shape, you should see old Rowdy. He's so sore and stiff he can't even wiggle his tail. He wouldn't come out from under the house to eat his breakfast. With a concerned look on her face, Mama reached over and placed her hand on my forehead. Why, Jay Berry, she said, you have a little fever. I think you'd better forget about this monkey catching and stay in bed for a few days. The way I was feeling, I didn't even argue with Mama. As if my getting eaten up by monkeys was was one of the most wonderful things that had ever happened in our family, Daisy squealed her delight and said, Mama, if you're going to make him stay in bed for a few days, then I'll get to practice my Red Cross nursing on him. When I heard Daisy mention that Red Cross nursing business, I started getting out of bed. Oh, no, you won't, I said. You're not practicing any of that stuff on me. I'm not sick enough to go through that again. Placing both of her hands on my shoulders, Mama pushed me back in the bed and said, You just stay put, young man. Somebody has to doctor you, and besides, your little sister is a pretty good nurse. I wanted to argue, but knew that it was useless. To win an argument with both Mama and Daisy was unheard of. I figured that the misery would last for only a couple of days, and I could put up with anything that long. This Red Cross nursing business had popped up about a year back when I had the mumps, and Daisy had read me a story about a Red Cross nurse. From the day she read that story, Daisy was bound and determined that that when she grew up, she was going to be a Red Cross nurse. She saved enough money to order some material that was the same color as the Red Cross nurses' uniforms. With Mama's help, she made a uniform complete with an armband and a dinky little hat. It got to be a common sight to see Daisy fluttering around in her nurse's uniform, doctoring everything that was sick and a lot of things that weren't sick at all. She took care of the pigs, chickens, calves, cats, birds, Rowdy, me, and everything else she could think of. She took care of all of my busted toes, scratches, stone bruises, and boils. If I came down with a bad cold or the flu, Daisy would put on her uniform and go to work. I never saw anything like it. Mama, Daisy said, do you think we could get old Rowdy into Jay Berry's room? If I had both of them in the same room, it sure would help a lot. That way, I could watch both of them at the same time. Mama smiled and said, I don't know about that. If Rowdy is as sore and stiff as you say he is, the only way we could move him is if we carried him. And that old hound is pretty heavy. Daisy thought a second and said, Mama, we could put him in a wheelbarrow and roll him in. Yes, Mama said, nodding her head, we might be able to do that. I felt sorry for Rowdy, but there wasn't a thing in the world I could do about it. I didn't figure they could catch him anyway, but I was wrong. It wasn't long until I heard the screeching of our old wheelbarrow coming through the house, with Rowdy about half in the wheelbarrow and half hanging out. They wheeled him into my room. Daisy made a pallet for him over in the corner. The next time Daisy entered my room, she was all decked out in her nurse's uniform. It was starched as stiff as a gingerbread man. She had a tray in her hands. To me, it looked like she had all the medicine we had in the house on it. There was liniment, um, Rayleigh salve, iodine, peroxide, castor oil, and all kinds of clean rags torn in strips, several boxes of pills, and a glass half full of alcohol with a thermometer in it. Good morning, Daisy said, smiling all over. And how are my patients this fine morning? Oh, Daisy, I said, you didn't have to say that. You were here just 5 minutes ago. I know, Daisy said, but that's the way nurses do it. Looking up to the ceiling and talking to myself, I said, Brother, if I come out of this alive, I'll sure be lucky. Ignoring my remark, Daisy set the tray on the small table in the room and started looking over her nursing supplies. Let's see now, she said. I think I have just about everything I need right now. Rearing up on my elbows, I said, Daisy, if you think I'm going to take all of that stuff, you're crazy. Why, I'd be dead before the sun goes down. As if she were the best doctor in the whole wide world, Daisy said, Oh, I don't think you'll have to take all of it, J. Barry, but I won't know just what medicine you'll need until I examine you. Taking the thermometer, Daisy gave it a good shaking, walked over, and dabbed it in my mouth. She felt my pulse, changed the bandages on my monkey bites, and washed my face with a cool rag. Then she lit into Rowdy. She changed all of his bandages, washed his face, and got him a pillow to lay his head on. I had to admit it that Daisy was a pretty good nurse, but it always made me feel uncomfortable lying there with her fussing around me that way. The first time Daisy brought me a glass of water, I was thirsty and drank every drop of it. 5 minutes later, she brought me a second glass, and I drank it too. 5 minutes later, she brought me a third glass, and I drank it just to please her. It didn't seem like I had hardly drunk the third glass when she came with the fourth one. By this time, I was pretty well waterlogged and refused to drink it. With a scared look on her face, Daisy stepped back and said, J. Barry, are you sure you don't want any more water? Sure, I'm sure, I said. What's the matter with you anyway? Before I hardly knew what was taking place, Daisy yelled, Mama, you better come here right now. Mama came running, scared half out of her wits. Looking at me and seeing that I was still alive, she looked at Daisy and said, What's wrong now? With a sorrowful look on her face, Daisy said, I think we'd better get the chains, Mama. He just quit drinking water, and you know what that means. No, Mama said. I'm afraid I don't know what that means. What does it mean? It means he's going mad, Mama, Daisy said. That's what it means. I looked up the word hydrophobia in the dictionary, and it said very plainly that anything going mad refuses to drink water, and he just quit drinking water. I figured that it was about time for me to say something, or I would surely have to drink the well dry or be chained to a fence post. Mama, I all but shouted, I haven't quit drinking water. I just can't drink any more. She's brought me a glass of water every 5 minutes for an hour and a half. I've had so much water now, I feel like a spring. Glancing at the glass of water Daisy held in her hand, Mama smiled and said, I think we can forget about the chains for a while. It may be that you're overdoing this water drinking. Rowdy put up with Daisy's nursing for 1 day. Then he hopped out the window, went back under the house, and refused to come out for anyone. It was 3 days before I saw the sunshine again, and I was never so happy in all of my life. I was burning up with the monkey catching fever and couldn't wait to get after them again. On the morning of the 4th day, I got my net and called Rowdy. Come on, boy, I said. Let's go to the store and have another talk with Grandpa. Rowdy started out from under the house, but he never came all the way out, just his head. On seeing the net in my hand, he turned around and went back. I saw right away that between Daisy's nursing and those monkeys, Rowdy had had it. Getting down on my knees, I peered back under the house. I could see Rowdy way back in the farthest corner. Come on, boy, I coaxed. I'm not going monkey hunting. I'm going to the store. Don't you want to come along? I could hear a lot of tail thumping, whimpering, and whining, but Rowdy still refused to come out. I begged and I pleaded. I promised him everything from fried rabbit to a red squirrel stew, but it did no good. Disgusted and feeling terrible, I took off down the road for Grandpa's store. I hadn't gone far when here came Rowdy, wiggling all over and tickled to death. Once he had seen that I wasn't going to the bottoms where those monkeys were, he was willing to come along. You should be ashamed of yourself, Rowdy, I said. A great big dog like you scared of little old monkeys. I really didn't mean what I had said to Rowdy because way down deep, I was just as scared of those monkeys as he was, but I was still determined to catch every last one of them. Grandpa must have been expecting me because just before I got to the store, he came out onto the porch and looked down the road. On seeing me, he sat down in his favorite chair and waited for me. As I walked up, he peered at me over his glasses and said, "Well, how'd it go?" "It didn't go so good, Grandpa," I said as I leaned the net up against the store. "Didn't the net work?" Grandpa asked. "Oh, yeah, it worked, Grandpa," I said. "It worked just like you said it would. I caught 2 of the little monkeys, but they got away from me." "Got away?" Grandpa said. "How did that happen?" "I really don't know how it happened, Grandpa," I said. "One minute I had 2 in the net, and the next minute they were gone. I was pretty busy at the time and didn't see exactly what did happen." Grandpa arched his eyebrows and said, "Busy? What were you doing?" "I was fighting monkeys, Grandpa," I said. "That's what I was doing. They were eating Rowdy and me up. Look." Stepping over close to Grandpa, I showed him the scabbed over monkey bites on my arms and legs. Grandpa looked me over, let out a long whistle, and said, "Boy, they sure did get a hold of you, didn't they? Did it hurt?" "Hurt?" I said. "I'll say it hurt. It made me sick. I've been in bed for 3 days. I never was so sore and stiff in all my life. If you think a squirrel can bite, you just ought to get bit by a monkey." "How did all this happen?" Grandpa asked. "Tell me about it." I told Grandpa everything that had happened from the time I jerked the blue ring on the net until the monkeys got away. I ended up by saying, "I don't believe those monkeys can be caught." "Oh, yes, they can," Grandpa said. "Just remember what I told you about animals. There never was one that couldn't be caught. And always keep more than one iron in the fire." "I know, Grandpa," I said, "but I'm afraid if things keep going like they have, we're going to run out of irons, and the fire's going out." Grandpa laughed, got up from his chair, and said, "Come here. I've got something to show you." I followed Grandpa into the store and watched while he reached up on a shelf and picked up an envelope. Waving it in front of my face, Grandpa grinned and said, "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "This is a letter from an animal trainer down in Florida," Grandpa said. "He's the fellow that trains animals for that circus. He trained that $100 monkey." "He did?" I said. He must be a darn good trainer because that is the smartest monkey in the world. I didn't see him do it, but I'm pretty sure that while those other monkeys were chewing on Rowdy and me, he sneaked in and let those 2 in the net loose." "I wouldn't doubt that a bit," Grandpa said. "He's smart enough, all right." "Did you know that monkey has a name?" "A name?" I said, very surprised. "Who ever heard of a monkey having a name?" "I never gave it much thought," Grandpa said, "but after I read this letter, I got to thinking. Practically all tame animals have names. Take your old milk cow. Her name is Sally Gooden. Your dad's 2 mules are named Fred and George. My buggy mares are named Molly and Bertie." "I know, Grandpa," I said, but that monkey's not tame. He's as wild as a hoot owl." Grandpa frowned and said, "I don't believe that monkey is as wild as you think he is. Once an animal has been tamed, he doesn't ever forget it." "What's the monkey's name, Grandpa?" I asked. According to what this trainer said in his letter, they call him Jimbo," Grandpa said. "Jimbo?" I said, laughing out loud. "Who ever heard of a name like that?" "Anyhow," Grandpa said, "that's his name." "Grandpa," I asked, what goods is it going to do us knowing his name?" "It might do a lot of good," Grandpa said. "This trainer said that if you could make friends with that monkey, he would probably do anything you wanted him to do." "Make friends with him?" I said. "Grandpa, I don't think that trainer knows what he's talking about. Why, you couldn't make friends with that monkey in 100 years." "I don't know," Grandpa said. "The trainer seems to think you could, and he should know. He says to offer him something to eat, call him by name, and talk to him. It might be worth a try. After all, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose." "Nothing to lose," I said. "Grandpa, if I got close to that monkey to offer him something to eat, I could lose my arm. He's got teeth like a pitchfork." "Oh, I don't think you have to worry about that," Grandpa said. "From what you've told me, he's about the only monkey in the bunch that hasn't tried to bite you." Thinking back to everything that had happened, I realized that Grandpa was right. "By golly, Grandpa, you're right," I said. "That Jimbo monkey hasn't tried to bite either Rowdy or me, but he sure doesn't mind sticking those little monkeys onto a fellow." "Do you think that this Jimbo monkey is the leader of the pack?" Grandpa asked. "Oh, I know he is, Grandpa," I said. "Those little monkeys won't do a thing until he tells them to." "That's fine," Grandpa said. "If you could make friends with Jimbo and get him to follow you, the little monkeys would probably follow him, and you might be able to lead the whole caboodle right into the corn crib." Grandpa made everything sound so simple, and I was feeling so good I would have been willing to try to make friends with a grizzly bear. But there were a few things in my mind that I needed to get straightened out. Grandpa, I said, I know that Jimbo Monkey hasn't tried to bite me, but I still can't believe he's looking for any friends. In fact, I believe he's got it in for Rowdy and me. He sure acts like it. Nah, Grandpa said. I don't think Jimbo has it in for anybody. His trainer says he likes people, especially youngsters. He probably thinks you've been playing games with them. Another thing, Grandpa, I said. What could I say to that monkey to make friends with him? I don't know how to talk to a monkey. You might try to talk to him like you do to Rowdy, Grandpa said. Offer him an apple and call him by his name. Don't act like you're trying to catch him, just act like you're trying to be friends with him. Do you really think that'll work, Grandpa? I asked. You can't ever tell, Grandpa said. I think it's worth a try. I thought a second and said, Okay, Grandpa, I'll give it a try. If I thought I could catch those monkeys, I'd be willing to try anything. I sure want that pony in point 22, and this is the only chance I'll ever have to make enough money to get them. Looking up at the sun, Grandpa said, It's early yet. I think you have time to try it out today. I'm going to, Grandpa, I said, just as soon as I get home. As I turned to be on my way, I thought of something. Grandpa, I asked, how come that animal trainer wrote to you? Grandpa grinned and said, That's one of those extra irons I was telling you about. I wrote a letter to those circus people and got an answer from the animal trainer. I smiled and said, I figured it was something like that, Grandpa. I don't know how I can ever pay you back for all you've done for me. I'll tell you how you can pay me back, Grandpa said. Just catch those monkeys, and I'll be well paid. Now, if you can't make friends with that monkey, don't let it bother you too much. If this doesn't work, we'll try something else. Grandpa, I said, if I can't make friends with that monkey, it won't be my fault because I'll sure be trying. I just hope no one sees me down in those bottoms talking to a monkey. Why, they would put me in the crazy house, sure as shootin'. Grandpa laughed and said, Oh, I don't think anything like that's going to happen. You wouldn't sound half as bad talking to a monkey as some of these farmers do talking to their mules. I laughed and said, I know what you mean, Grandpa. Sometimes I listen to Papa talking to our mules while he's working with them. If I was a mule and somebody yelled, Gee and haw at me all day long, I wouldn't do anything. I'd have a runaway every 15 minutes. Grandpa said, You have to let animals know who the boss is, or they'll take advantage of you. Well, I said, I'd better be on my way. I'm anxious to see if I can make friends with that monkey. I am too, Grandpa said. Let me know how you come out.